Hey team, Master Schiele here. Today we're going to be talking about why belt testing is the key to your success. If you've not yet, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and all that great stuff. It'll keep me sending this information to you. Let's get right into it. So, do you know how diamonds are formed? Diamonds are formed under only the most intense pressure. When that pressure is there, guess what happens? A diamond is formed. Well, how do we create pressure in martial arts? We do that through belt testing. Belt testing is the pressure needed for a student to become a diamond in the arts, right? Now, what happens is when you're trying to grow as a martial artist, there's two things that in our system and most systems are going to help you to accomplish receiving your next belt. Number one is attendance. Attendance not only in class, but also what you do when you're not in class also counts, all right? I do want to say that. And two is mastery of the technique needed to grow and to show that you're ready for that next belt rank. With those two things, what happens is now you should be ready for that next belt. Testing, I don't know about you, but let's sidetrack for a second. I've never liked the word test. Okay, I always had an anxiety over it, and I never had a great feeling whenever there was a test in school. So let's call it a graduation. Let's say you're graduating to the next belt. You need that attendance and you need that mastery of the skills in order to graduate to that next skill. I think it just puts a better feeling in us, right? So let's use that word a little bit. Now, when you're graduating to belts, remember something. Graduating, you're almost trying to have building blocks, right? So you take a building block and then you take another one and another one and another one to the point that you have a very solid structure. So that key is without that building block, well, you're never growing, right? So if there's a student, let's say, for example, that just stays at a belt, well, you're never showing that pressure of going forward. You're never showing that, hey, I had a moment of triumph where I showed my skills, I graduated to the next belt, and I had that moment where I got to retire my old belt. You need that. That is very important to the growth in martial arts. Over the years, I've seen this. I've had students come in and say, belts aren't important to me. And it's always a hard thing because when I have a student like that, they're not getting the full benefit out of classes. And guess what? They can never become a black belt because they've never shown that they've learned those skills to move to the next level, right? Because we can't graduate them, right? So you have to show us as a martial artist that you're ready for that next belt. And there's a difference. There's a difference between a white belt to a green belt, from a green belt to a red belt, to all the belts. When you see a higher ranking belt, there's a significant difference than somebody that is a basic level that maybe just has been training for a long time and never moved forward. So that really is key. Now, also part of what happens is with those building blocks, you're working the consistency, there's a timeline that you're working, but also there's a constant need to repair. Let's talk about this. So let's say you are building a big pillar of stones, and the stones at the bottom start to break, and they start to crumble, and they start to fall. What happens to the whole structure? It falls down, right? So as a martial artist, we need to consistently go back and repair those. We repair the techniques, the forms, the self-defense, the kicks, the punches. You're constantly doing that as you're building more blocks, and that's where that growth is, and that's where the belt structure of graduating to those next belts really comes into play. Because not only are you supposed to add bricks, but you're supposed to go back and make sure all the bricks that were below that are mastered as well. You never get to move forward unless everything beyond that is there for you. Does that make sense? Now, that is really key. I want to tell you a story. There was a kid, and the kid was about 10 years old. He was a red belt. And this kid had a little time frame where he was gone for not too long, maybe a few weeks. He was a red belt, like I said, and what happened was he didn't want to come back into class. Do you know why? Because he didn't know his form, and he didn't have the skills needed to get that next belt. So there was a kind instructor that took him under his wing, helped him out, got his attendance back up, got him up to that level, and you know what happened? That student never quit after that point. 10 years old. Do you know who that student was? That student was me. When I was 10, I wanted to quit more than anything. Not because I didn't love martial arts. I told my parents I didn't like it. I told my parents I was bored. But the key was I told them that because I was afraid. I was afraid of that belt test because I missed some time. I didn't feel I was up to par to the other students, and it was just easier for me to quit than to face that fear. But by facing that fear and by my instructor helping me, I never failed. I never quit in the art. So huge shout out to Master Ketchen as well for being there in my corner and, you know, really taking me under his wing, because without you, sir, I wouldn't be here today. That is key, is never quitting. Understand that pressure is important. If you don't have that pressure, you will never grow, right? You need that pressure, and you don't have to feel that there's the fear of quitting, right? Just go for it. Go for it. Don't let anything get in your way. Belt, there, right? The belt's there. Don't worry about the belt. Get to class. Don't fail on your success, all right? Don't give in to that fear. That's what almost happened to me right there. All right, let's move forward. So belts testing is also key, because what happens is as you're moving forward, it's going to give you exactly where you are in the art. Okay, let's go back to that pillar, okay? So you have this pillar, there's a top level, right? And you know there's a bottom level. And there's a key that really shows where they are. And pretty much what we do is we color coordinate it, right? So wherever you are, you're supposed to have an idea of where the belts, exactly where you are with that, the skills that you've learned. If I have a student come from another martial art, first thing I'll always do is I'll say, what belt did you get? And you know, there might be a little differences in the different martial arts, but overall, they're very similar, okay? Usually a black belt is a black belt, color belt, you know, like a blue belt is midway, white belt is beginner level. So they're very similar across the board, and it'll give me an idea of what they learned in their old school, even if it's not the same art as us. It just kind of gives me an idea of what their background is. So that is another way that we really kind of grow with that, is that belt testing helps us, because now you're at that different rank and it'll show exactly where you're supposed to be. Team, I'd like to finish off this video with something very important. Growth is important no matter where you are. Growth is important at the high levels in your training. Growth is important at the low levels of training. Without that growth, we die. There's a saying that I've always loved. If there's a tree and it stops growing, it dies. And the same thing for us. If we stop growing as a martial artist, we die in the art. So it's important to consistently grow. It's important to consistently test. One of the worst things you could possibly do is say, I don't want to test anymore. I'm not going to grow. Well, let's say someone's a black belt. There's a reason that there's degrees, right? There's a reason that we have those degrees of black belt, because it forces us to grow. And it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the degree. If you are going for a degree of black belt, you are trying to take yourself to the next level. In fact, if you're a master, there's even more pressure, because now you really have to step it up in some way and somehow. So growth, team, is really the key. That belt testing is key. Consistency is key. Don't fail on that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do check out my other videos too. I think you'll love them. Belt testing explained, and I also have a really great one, which is the degrees of black belts explained. I think you'll love those videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in our next video. Take care.